Welcome back to the Crypto Father channel. Today is the 29th of August. I think it may be one of the last days, isn't it? I don't know how many days there are in August. In any case, in today's video, I'll be reading to you a forensic analysis of TradeOgre. So it may be a little bit dense, so strap on your seatbelt, smash the like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump first things first into the markets, because that's what we always do. So we'll have a quick look at the markets, and then I'm going to jump into talking about TradeOgre. Just keep in mind it's a bit of an analysis, and take it as a new piece of evidence or a new piece of news or an updated piece of news. I wanted to talk about the potential of, the future for TradeOgre. What's going to happen? What might happen based on the evidence that I'm going to present to you. The markets are presently at $3.9 trillion, a little bit below the $4 trillion, $140 billion in trading volume. Pith Network is apparently making waves because it has been the US, I forget what the article was, but apparently the US Gov is eyeing Pith Network for some or other transaction purposes, so that's why it's pumping. Bitcoin is at $111,000, Ethereum $4,457, Solana 213, Chainlink 24. Chainlink is becoming a major player in the US crypto finance block. It's going to allow the US government to place apparently all of its info over on Chainlink. So I'm not sure how that's going to work exactly, but Chainlink is going to play a major role in the crypto industry in the USA, apparently, from what I've read so far. Sui $3, Toncoin $3.17, Polkadot dumped a little bit, no, at $3.91. Where's Cardano? Cardano 84 cents. There was a post by Zach XBT providing some super negative stuff on XRP and Cardano. Actually, well, I don't know. It was just his position. Basically, he said that he would not support any of those, particularly XRP communities, because he saw them as nothing more than exit liquidity. In his statement, he viewed the community behind Cardano and XRP as nothing, not contributing at all to the ecosystem, to the crypto ecosystem, and being nothing more than exit liquidity for inside traders. So not a good look for Cardano. On the chart, Bitcoin is actually creating a nice little staircase here. On the 4-hour chart, we've had a dip, then on leg up, retracement, leg up, retracement, leg up, retracement. So Bitcoin has been forming higher highs from the lows here. It's been a higher high event and a higher low event, which is a good thing. On the 4-hour chart, we've got an upward moving channel. On the daily, it's just an upward moving trajectory right now, but Bitcoin's struggling with this resistance line here at $112,000. It broke above that, and it broke above the Fibonacci support at 0.382, but of course retraced back, so we need to wait for another candle to open up above these levels in order for Bitcoin to return back to its bull run status. Just a quick thing, Tether just minted 1 billion USDT. That's 2 billion in the past 24 hours. So it's beginning to look like someone's getting ready for a shopping spree. It looks beginning to look like a lot of money is going to be dropped into Bitcoin. And here's a piece of news. US regulator opens pathway for Americans to trade on offshore crypto exchanges. I think that's going to be massive. This comes to pass, because that should also open the doors for offshore cryptocurrency exchanges to return back, like Binance, for example, to return back to the United States and allow US citizens to stash their crypto on those exchanges. So I'm not sure if that's going to help to add to the bulk of the existing crypto market cap, or if it's just going to dilute what the US exchanges already have. Tether is to launch USDT stablecoin directly on Bitcoin network, and they've also managed to freeze 49 million in pig butchering funds. Chainalysis, Binance, OKX join APAC crackdown. And so with that in mind, let's jump to TradeOgre, and I'm going to begin with this article here. This is from last year, 2024. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, if you heard of it, but this may be one of the biggest cases that is directly linked to TradeOgre, and which kind of may be setting the stage for TradeOgre's downfall. A Singaporean man allegedly stole 230 million in cryptocurrency, and what he spent it on doesn't matter. This kid bought a bunch of supercars and all that garbage. But Malone Lamb 20 has been charged in the United States with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. Together with his co-conspirator Jindiel Serrano, they allegedly stole over 4,100 Bitcoin worth about 230 million at the time from a victim in Washington. Serrano allegedly, this is the point, this is the important part that relates directly to TradeOgre. Serrano allegedly created an account on TradeOgre, a digital currency exchange, and made a deposit of about 29 million worth of cryptocurrencies. He did not use a VPN when he created the account, and records from TradeOgre showed that the account was created from an IP address registered to Serrano's home in Encino, California, which was being rented at $47,000 per month. God damn. So this is the first instance of TradeOgre being directly implicated in wire fraud, in cryptocurrency fraud and money laundering, I guess, because Serrano has created, although it does say allegedly created, an account on TradeOgre with the direct for the direct purpose of laundering money on it. So I did a little bit of digging in order to find out what other cases were linked to TradeOgre, and there's quite a bit, but this is the main one that stands out. The other ones, in other cases, TradeOgre is simply mentioned as a kind of a bystander, as an unintentional conduit for illegal activities, as this article states. The primary legal action identified in the United States versus Jindiel Serrano, where TradeOgre was a key component in a sophisticated money laundering scheme. A crucial finding of this report is the distinction between the singular government-led criminal case and a separate set of public allegations against TradeOgre. The latter involves claims from members of the Caspa crypto community regarding the misappropriation of funds and long-term issues with asset withdrawals. These are not formal legal charges from a government entity, but rather public accusations documented in journalistic reports. This is a positive overall for TradeOgre. Obviously, clearly, I'm not trying to minimize the repercussions that this had for the Caspa community and for people who were invested in Caspa, because there was a lot of this cost people a lot of money. But the difference is that while in this case, the Jindiel Serrano case, TradeOgre was directly implicated in it as being the main place on which Serrano was exchanging his cryptocurrency, doing the laundering, and so that was put before the courts and gone through a legal proceeding, while the Caspa charges or the Caspa accusations were done through in a public forum, so to speak. When compared to other high-profile cases, such as those involving exchanges like BitMEX, KuCoin, and Garantex, these other exchanges were directly targeted by the Department of Justice and other U.S. government agencies for widespread systematic violations of anti-money laundering protocols and sanctions. The enforcement actions against them resulted in significant financial penalties and indications of their founders and forced exit from key markets. Conversely, TradeOgre's mention is ancillary to a case against an individual criminal, which, while placing the exchange on law enforcement radar, does not currently position it as a direct object of a broader regulatory crackdown, which is a good thing. It's not, TradeOgre is not being directly targeted by government regulatory bodies in order to take it down or whatever, right? TradeOgre's mention in the Serrano case highlights its vulnerability to criminal exploitations, while the lack of a broader U.S. government enforcement action against the exchange itself indicates a different, though still precarious, legal status. The public allegations, while not an official legal matter, further point to a significant counterparty and operational risks for its users. Obviously, using TradeOgre, despite the fact that it is non-KYC and you don't need to provide any details, it's still pretty easy to trace the identities of people who deposit money into non-KYC exchanges if push comes to shove. Obviously, Serrano had used TradeOgre, and that has been traced back through the deposits that were done and through whatever means that they used in order to trace it back to Serrano, right? The inquiry implicitly assumes the existence of a number of recent court cases that have named the exchange for money laundering. However, a comprehensive review of the available materials reveals a more complex reality. The distinction between a platform acting as a conduit for a crime and being the direct subject of a criminal prosecution is paramount to understanding the nuance of the situation. In the former scenario, an exchange is used as a tool by a criminal to facilitate illicit activity, but the criminal is the primary target of the prosecution. So even though, Serrano was using TradeOgre as a conduit, as a means of laundering the money, TradeOgre is not the actual suspect here, right? They're not the criminal. They're just kind of a funnel through which all the stolen funds have gone through. In the latter, the exchange itself is the direct target of a regulatory or criminal investigation for its own systematic failures, such as violations of the Bank Secrecy Act or other financial regulations. So this, in a way, is a positive for TradeOgre, right? They haven't really done anything that's criminal. They've just been used for criminal purposes. I don't know, like they can't even be viewed as the getaway driver, because it's not like they were sitting there and waiting and were aware of a crime being committed, and then they allowed it to happen on their premises. That is not the case. So in some sense, this is a positive for TradeOgre. So in the case of the United States versus DL Serrano, the most definite mention of TradeOgre in a formal legal context is found within the pre-trial detention memo for the case of United States versus Jindal Serrano, a high-profile criminal proceeding in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. The case involves a sophisticated large-scale cyber fraud and money laundering conspiracy. According to court documents, Serrano and his co-founder, co-conspirator Malone Lam, orchestrated a social engineering attack that targeted a single victim in Washington, D.C. The duo allegedly impersonated technical support from Google and Gemini crypto exchanges to gain access to the victim's private information. Through this elaborate deception, they manipulated the victim into downloading a remote access software and opening files containing the private keys to their cryptocurrency holdings. This allowed them to steal over 4,100 Bitcoin, which at the time of the theft were valued at $230 million. This is kind of a cautionary note as well. Nobody calls you. There is no such thing as a hotline or Google or Gemini crypto exchange hotline. They don't call you on the phone, not usually, unless maybe this applies to like people with massive amounts of crypto holding being held on their exchanges. Maybe in that case they get special treatment. But if you are a small crypto holder, if you have less than 4,100 Bitcoin, like significantly less, you're 100% unlikely to receive a phone call from Google or any other exchange trying to help you with some hack. If there were usually, in most cases, when you withdraw money, if you have, if the exchange has it set up, and if you have it set up, you receive a message letting you know that there is has been a withdrawal, and a withdrawal has been initiated, which allows you, basically the funds are held. And then that allows you to verify whether that was you or somebody else, or if somebody else is trying to take funds off your exchange. And that allows you to block it, because if, you can stop the message right then and there. But there's no phone calls. Nobody ever calls you up and says, hey, somebody's messing around with your account. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So if this happens to you, then, that's your red flag right there. I would stop, look, and listen. TradeOgre's specific role in this scheme is detailed in the DOJ's pre-trial memo, which describes the sophisticated money laundering technique employed by the conspirators to hide the stolen funds. The filing implicitly states that Serrano himself created an account on TradeOgre to deposit approximately $29 million. So this is in the DOJ's memo. But again, keep in mind that, TradeOgre is just the conduit. It's not like they are implicit in this. They were just used for the purpose of money laundering. This demonstrates that TradeOgre was intentionally used by the criminal as a key step in their plan to obfuscate the illicit origins of the assets. So that's not a good look, but still, for criminals who are drawn to non-KYC exchanges like TradeOgre, in hopes of anonymity. This case reveals a significant vulnerability. A platform's lack of formal identification requirements does not guarantee a criminal's anonymity, especially when other operational security failures, like a single unprotected IP connection, can lead to their identification. So even though there is no KYC, following the IP connections can weed out the perpetrator. Yeah. Law enforcement's ability to leverage a combination of on-chain and off-chain data points means that non-compliant exchanges, far from being anonymous havens, can inadvertently become sources of criminal evidence against the criminals who use them. Which brings me back to the point somebody made about TradeOgre being run by the FBI or being, a government-run operation. It could be, just because, I mean, KYC, anytime there's KYC, obviously it's required, you need to provide your passport, your identification, and so you are exposed, right? But the non-KYC exchanges, which do not require any of those details, any of the ID details, will be more likely to attract cyber criminals, those who want to launder money, right? Because technically they make it a lot easier. You don't have to provide your identity. You just hop on, throw in some money, exchange it for this, that, on the other, and then you swap it for whatever other coin, if you can, if there's enough liquidity on it. Because, like, for example, non-KYC is crap for liquidity, so it would be pretty tough to launder $29 million worth of crypto through a place like KYC. I guess TradeOgre had a lot more going on it, which is why it probably has been used for those purposes. According to the report, Kaspa holders have been unable to withdraw their tokens from the exchange for over 6 months, with a total estimated loss exceeding 6 million. So this is public allegations of fund misappropriation and loss. Separately from the US criminal case, TradeOgre has been the subject of significant public allegations from members of Kaspa cryptocurrency community. The situation is detailed in a journalistic report and represents a non-governmental private dispute that has not culminated in formal legal charges from a state or federal entity, because nothing was stolen and people were able to communicate. At least as far as I know, I did communicate with TradeOgre during that time, and I asked him about the Kaspa lockup, and they gave me like a roundabout answer, nothing specific. Basically, it seemed like they were concerned about price manipulation, and so they withheld the funds of Kaspa in order to prevent people from, I don't know, from cashing out more than they could. I'm not exactly sure what was happening. I didn't read the reports, but in any case, according to this report, the total estimated loss exceeded $6 million, which is a nice hefty sum. So I can see why people were pissed. And I mean, when you have, your stuff on an exchange, it's your crypto, but it's locked up, and the exchange decides not to let you use it. Obviously, that's highly upsetting. And then you see prices go up and down, and you know that you could be trading, selling, making money, and you can't do any of it because the exchange locked up your wallet. That would not be a good position to be in, right? Contextual analysis, the broader landscape of cryptocurrency illicit finance. To fully appreciate TradeOgre's legal and operational position, it is essential to place its situation within the broader landscape of US government actions against cryptocurrency exchanges. The cases against other platforms reveal a clear spectrum of regulatory scrutiny, with TradeOgre currently occupying a position distinct from exchanges that have been the direct targets of systematic enforcement. BitMEX, a high-profile case of CFTC and DOJ, took decisive action against founders of BitMEX, cryptocurrency derivatives trading platform. The charges stemmed from platforms operating as an unregistered trading facility and its systematic failure. Anyway, they were charged that CFC resolved its action with $100 million civil penalty, monetary penalty, while the founders were each required to pay $10 million in penalties. Garantex was also charged, and the enforcement action resulted in the seizure of website domains and over $26 million in funds. KuCoin was fined. The consequences were served, with KuCoin agreeing to a $300 million penalty and being forced to exit the US market for 2 years. And this was based on the fact, on the idea presumption that KuCoin had about 1.5 million registered US users and was earning substantial fees from them, and so that's why they slapped this massive fine on them. But so All these exchanges were deemed to be running illegal activities, illegal operations, while TradeOgre has not had that thrown against them just yet. The comparison of these cases to TradeOgre's situation reveals a clear distinction. BitMEX, Grantex, and KuCoin were direct targets of government action, with the charges specifically addressing their systematic operations failures and alleged willful violations of US law. In contrast, TradeOgre was named incidentally within a criminal case against an individual for a separate crime. This distinction is paramount. It determines that while TradeOgre is known to law enforcement as a platform used by criminals, it has not yet, based on the available research, been the subject of a direct regulatory action for its own operational deficiencies. This places it in a different category of regulatory risk compared to the major exchanges that have faced a direct top-down crackdown. So I'm not sure whether this is a good or a bad thing for TradeOgre. Not having fingers pointed at it, you know, saying that you are breaking the law is a good thing. But at the same time, not being kind of a Joe Schmo who just stands there. You know, TradeOgre doesn't implement KYC, which means they're not collecting enough information from the users, which means that most users are anonymous to a certain degree, to a certain extent. But at the same time, it's like TradeOgre standing aside going, I don't know, I'm just here and these people are throwing money at me and whatever happens with that money, I don't know, right? So that's kind of claiming ignorance doesn't work. So on one side, on one hand, it's good that TradeOgre is not having fingers pointed at it, that it hasn't officially broken any laws or hasn't performed any criminal activities, but at the same time, it clearly allows for the execution of criminal activities by not instituting KYC, by not implementing proper KYC on the platform. According to this report, the findings of this report indicate that the legal standing of the TradeOgre cryptocurrency exchange is multifaceted and requires careful consideration of the nature of its public mentions. The analysis reveals a critical distinction between the single US government criminal case where the exchange was named as a conduit and a separate set of public allegations that represent a private dispute. TradeOgre has been named as a conduit for money laundering and a criminal case against a separate individual, and that stands out in contrast to the exchanges like BitMEX, Grantex, KuCoin, who have been directly mentioned as committing criminal offenses, essentially. The comparative analysis reveals that TradeOgre's legal situation is not equivalent to that of exchanges directly targeted for their systematic failures. While it has been named in a criminal context, the charge is not against the platform itself, but against the individual who used it. This distinction is a crucial nuance for a professional audience performing due diligence on the exchange. And so in this article, it doesn't bring up the present court cases that are ongoing. And again, there are several of them. So far, I've counted 3 that have been mentioned, and all 3 have mentioned TradeOgre in them. And you got to keep in mind that TradeOgre went down at the end of July 30th or something like that. But the court cases have been ongoing since the beginning of this year, essentially. So it's pretty late in the day that TradeOgre went down. Basically, they went down in the last moment when the courts probably had them freeze the accounts and basically render the entire exchange dormant, because based on Arkham, Bitcoin and the ETH storage, the Bitcoin and ETH wallets are some of the biggest, like the top 5 biggest holdings, right? So out of the $26 million that are presently locked up on TradeOgre, 12 million of that is in Bitcoin and 827. So basically almost 14 million of that, which is, you know, a hefty chunk. It's like over 50%, right? Of that is in the wallets that have been frozen, and the rest is in 10 million in AUSDT and $2 million worth of USDT. So those are some major wallets that have been frozen, and so it makes sense for TradeOgre to stop its operations, because I mean, if these wallets are non-functional, then that's a bulk of their operations, and they probably simply are unable to perform the regular duties of an exchange, right? Because there would be no liquidity if you can't have these two wallets function, or these two assets rather, not wallets, because there's 4 wallets altogether. But I remember somebody mentioning in the early days of the of TradeOgre going down, somebody mentioned that they had a last-minute communication with the support of TradeOgre, who answered to the question of whether TradeOgre would be coming back online with a resounding "I don't know." And when you look at the article I just read, the information that I just went over, it basically is the same thing. I don't know. It's hard to say. It will depend on what will come out of these proceedings, of these legal proceedings. If TradeOgre is just an exchange that has been mentioned in passing as having been the place where that criminals used to launder their money, then it might very likely be the case of TradeOgre being released back into the public, and maybe not even with a slap on the wrist. They may just have been there for the time being. The wallets would have to be frozen in order to conduct investigations and to trace the laundering, the movements of the cryptocurrencies, the stolen cryptocurrencies. And then once that's concluded, TradeOgre would be released. That's one possibility. And the other possibility would be that because of that, the government might begin trying to institute some regulatory frameworks on TradeOgre, or prohibit them from operating altogether based on all the crap that TradeOgre has been through, basically, because it seems like TradeOgre has been used as the perfect source for money laundering by hackers. And of course, the fiasco with Caspa doesn't sit well either with a lot of people, despite the fact that it had not been brought before the courts. It was judicially addressed in a public forum. So things are not looking good for TradeOgre right now. Like it is, when you start looking at everything that TradeOgre has been a conduit of, a lot of all the hacks and all the money laundering, it's not looking good for TradeOgre. I mean, if imagine that there is a money laundering scheme going on, and there is one specific aspect of the operation that there's certain links in a chain, and one of those links is TradeOgre, and without that link, the whole operation breaks down, or at least the absence of that particular link puts a massive damper temporarily on the operation. Wouldn't you want to make sure that this link is eliminated, right? So TradeOgre could be that link right now. If the majority of hacked money, of hijacked money has been laundered through TradeOgre, then TradeOgre would be a primary suspect in this, despite the fact that it is not being fingered as the main culprit of it, that it's not being, there are no criminal charges against it right now. It is basically kind of a funnel through which a lot of the stolen funds have been going, and so removing that funnel will obviously slow down the funneling and probably just redirect it to other areas, but it will eliminate one source, one ease of access, one way of ease of access for criminals to launder their stolen funds through. So I think this is what we may be looking at. And so TradeOgre's response to whether they're coming online being I don't know is a very valid one. And it's I would say, if I were to place bets on poly markets or whatever, I think TradeOgre coming back online would be like less than 20% right now. But so this is the report for TO for now. Make sure to smash the like, subscribe to the channel, of course, do all those things. Share the content with a wider audience. Pick up a Descent wallet, store your crypto on a Descent wallet, because these things keep you safe. The ref links are below the video. You get a $30 discount on the purchase of one, or $99 discount with the purchase of two of these bad boys, so pick that up. Also, do remember to pick up a copy of Crypto and Millennials. All these things help support the channel. I know that a lot of people talk about, oh, crypto YouTubers or YouTubers are here to make money. Well, I mean, it's a source of business. It's something that YouTubers, and I'm not talking about all YouTubers, but small channels like myself, if I can make an income by, providing you things like ref links for Descent wallet, set up connections with Descent wallets, and then they provide discounts for my viewers and then, you know, give me driblets of that. And I mean, it's not enough to be sustainable. The biggest thing that I think YouTubers can make money from is by basically growing the channel and having a massive viewership and massive following, which is great, but it takes a very long time. So, and YouTube doesn't pay that much. I'm serious. Like, up until now, I was making about $100 every 3 months. So if you think I'm doing this for money, I know that there are some comments left under my video saying that I'm doing this for money. And, you know, this is a common misconception. YouTubers don't make that much money unless you have millions of subscribers, like Mr. Beast with 300 millions. He makes thousands, if not millions of dollars per video, literally. I did the math and it's like something stupid, like few $1 million a video that he makes on the whatever 300 or 400 million views that he has. Anyway, that aside, pick up this book. It's only $11 and it'll teach you something. It's ready for pickup now, but it'll be available in just a couple of days, September 1st. So get it now. Send it as a gift, read it yourself. I promise you, you're not gonna regret getting this book. In the meantime, it's Friday today, so have a fantastic Friday. Weekend will allow me, I twisted my ankle a couple of weeks ago, so I'm staying home because this thing needs to rest. So in the meantime, over the weekend, I'll probably do some scouring the internet and do some more digging on TradeOgre. Hopefully, I'll be able to find some more information. In the meantime, do remember to smash the likes, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support, and the messages that you're sharing in regards to TradeOgre are freaking fantastic. So thank you very much for doing that and for being engaged. And I will see you in the next video. Have a fantastic weekend. Peace.